You're on.
Hi, this is Danielle and Jonathan from Kepperling Preservation Services to talk to you today about maintenance. Um, we have a couple questions to answer, but if you have any questions while we're going, be sure to write a comment below. There's a little bit of a delay, maybe 10 seconds, so on our end when we get the question, but we'll definitely answer them all at the end. So um, I've spent this past month sending out emails about maintenance being preservation, and we thought it would be good to spend a little bit of time talking to you about why it is and what you need to do to give you a little bit more information. So all building materials deteriorate, whether they're traditional or modern materials, and weather and nature does that. Weather, the sun, rain, snow, freezing's a big thing, and nature, the vegetation growing on a building, animals, squirrels like to get into attics. So it's a cycle, and you have to then plan to repair things, whether it's an emergency or not. So you should have a maintenance plan to prevent demolition by neglect. Because if you have, the neglect, then you lose the original features and craftsmanship. And at the point where you're having a maintenance repair, the traditional materials are repairable, which makes them a green option. The other thing that planning and having a maintenance plan does is it allows you to preserve your finances. It allows you to plan out projects rather than having unscheduled emergencies, or you can be more proactive rather than corrective. Because of neglect, you can just maintain it and keep it a baseline rather than a huge problem. And then small repairs don't turn into major projects. When you're planning your maintenance plan, you want to make sure that you document your repairs, include photographs, the conditions, and then also the materials that you used and how you approach the repair. I know that we often have clients that will be excited because the previous homeowner leaves like a binder of all that material. And it also helps us to understand what they've already tried, especially if there's an ongoing problem, which happens sometimes with water. Is that true? Like water will get in, and we're trying to figure out, you try to do the path of least resistance. So you try to figure out, what's the easiest thing to fix, and to figure out where the source is, so you can stop the damage and stop the deterioration. So knowing what other people have already done really helps with that. And sometimes the answers are easy and sometimes they're not. So, but it also allows the work to be planned for and to be done in an organized, priority manner. So then maintenance-free projects or products can often damage the historic fabric and character of the building more than they're helping to repair it. And I know that the marketing tells you that maintenance-free is, you'll have all this time, you'll be laying by your pool, or you'll have this time to go golfing, or but really what it's doing is, most times the most damage that we see is the water's getting trapped behind whatever maintenance-free product that is there, whether it's a waterproof sealer, the rubberized paints, or synthetic siding, whether it's vinyl or aluminum. And also when they put synthetic siding on, if there's brackets or anything decorative, they will take those off so that they have 90-degree angles to work to, because that's easier. So you want to make sure that nothing is maintenance free. When they're saying maintenance free, it means that you're going to have to replace it rather than maintain it. So and then that's more expensive than the maintenance would be. So there's a quote that I saw a few years ago by Richard Nickel, and it's, "Great architecture only has two natural enemies, water and stupid men." And that is what we see a lot of, is water damage and water getting into buildings, and that's like one of the biggest issues and one of the biggest causes of deterioration. The good news is that, because of how traditional buildings are constructed in the materials, once it has a chance to dry out, it's usually okay. But if it doesn't have a chance to dry out because you've trapped it, because you've used the maintenance-free products or something else, then that's when you have the issue. So we had 2 questions posed to us about water. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about what that solution or what ideas we have for the solutions. The first one was about a filled stone house, masonry construction and water influx migration. And they said they struggle with water influx in their stone bank house. The water is also running down the mountain, and it has plenty of places to find its way in. So there's a couple of different ways that you can approach this. And one thing that you might notice as you're driving around and you see a stone farmhouse, if you see one side that's stuccoed, that's probably where the wind-driven rain comes in, because they would just stucco the one side of the house to stop the water from seeping in through the mortar joints mostly, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's just in case you ever wondered why they only stuccoed one side, that's typical. But if you're having water coming down from an elevated position, that gets into stormwater management. So Jonathan can talk a little bit about how we would approach that from both the interior and the exterior.
First, I would do it in the exterior, just so we're not changing anything on the inside. Not to mention, most of the time the water is coming from the exterior into the inside through the ground.
Sometimes
in that aspect.
I was gonna say sometimes you do see groundwater come up like in a spring, but
but
that's not the situation.
But that's
we're
a totally
about.
different situation. That would be a perimeter drain inside with a sump pump to suck it out and away from the inside out. This one is pretty much, it's the same kind of concept, except for you don't have a sump pump or anything. You basically are putting a perimeter drain around the outside of it. So if it's coming down through the dirt, it can go, you can purge the outside wall underground, so it seals it on the outside, so it's not coming in and traveling up or wherever else it's going.
And typically in that case, you would use a type S mortar. That's more waterproof than either a lime-based or like a type N.
Yep. And that way you can get the groundwater that's from the outside traveling away from the house. The other aspect would be on the top, after everything's backfilled and you got the pipe in with the perforated holes, you got it crushed, you got it wrapped up in
landscape cloth.
Yeah, landscape cloth, and then you put more stone around it just so that it doesn't get clogged up. And then what that'll allow the water to do is go in, travel out, and away from the house. Okay, but then you put all that in, you put the dirt back on top. At that point is where you'd have the grade slope higher from the house away down, even if the mountain is way up high here and the other one's lower. That way the water comes down and it can't go all the way back up, and it gets forced down the trough and away. So that gets rid of all the top groundwater.
And that stops it then from getting in at the foundation. Now, if you're having issues of it getting into the wall, the stucco is the traditional option. The other is to make sure that all your pointing's good, that you don't have any cracks in your pointing, and make sure that around your perimeters, we've seen that as a big issue too, around the doors and windows. That what was the house that we just saw that the water was actually coming in from above.
On the roof line.
On the roof line, it didn't have an overhang, so the water was getting into the stone and from the roof, directly. Was there a gutter? I don't remember if there was a gutter. There was no gutter. There was no overhang. So actually, the roof was set back from the stone wall. It was bad design.
It's like 1.5 inches, 2 inches, but it was enough where the water was running down in through the joints and into the house.
So water's tricky. You have to kind of look and see if you can see where it's coming from. Stop those places first. Do your stormwater management at the ground level, and then if you're still having problems, it's further investigation. But those would be the easiest. The other thing that we see oftentimes in masonry is if you're, and the second question we had was about plaster, and I'll read the question, but well, let me read the question, then I'll tell you what I think about it. I have horsehair plaster, and even though it's skimmed with plaster, which I'm not sure what that means, over time moisture sets in and it peels off again. The two areas are not large but troublesome. I would wonder where the location is. I don't feel like I have enough information to tell you exactly how to correct the problem. So sometimes like at the baseboard level, especially on the first floor of a masonry house, whether it's brick or stone, you'll see like between the baseboard and where the chair rail would be, if it has chair rail, you'll see the plaster begin to flake off. And you're like, where's the water coming from? There's no plumbing here. There's no roof to leak. It's wicking up from the masonry on the outside. So if you start to see plaster failure on the first floor at a low level, that would be my first instinct and my first way that I would want you to look to see what the problem is. The second thing is if you're having issues from the bay window. So like if it's on a second floor, typically a row house in town, you'll at the bay window and you start to have plaster deterioration, it's most likely your internal gutter system or your roof's leaking. Mm-hmm. Other places, if it's getting moisture, you need to solve the moisture problem before you solve the stucco problem, or before you solve the plaster problem, because you're going to keep repairing the plaster, and as long as there's still moisture getting in, you're going to still have the moisture issues. In a situation where we have a masonry wall that keeps getting wet, how we have treated that previously is to do like a parging of the type S mortar and then do the traditional plaster on top of that. Mm-hmm. And that did not seem to be that seemed to be an effective remedy. I'm trying to think what other, besides doing something on the, well, if it's a roof leak or the if it's a roof leak or the internal gutter, that's a fix from the outside.
Yep.
But yeah, anytime you have a moisture issue, I mean, we'll go over tomorrow priorities on how to choose what you're going to fix. But you definitely want to make sure the exterior envelope of your building is secure before you start doing finish work, because you're just going to have to keep redoing it over and over unless you solve the underlying problem, which is why it's important to have people that understand how all the systems work together to find the problems and it might be more expensive on the front end, but it's definitely will save you in time and aggravation on the back end.
That it does.
So, and I don't see any other questions, so we will sign off today. Tomorrow we're going to talk about how to plan out your maintenance inspections and what to look for in each system that gets inspected. Thank you.